Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Bria, and today we're talking about a chronic illness that I have called PMDD. So many of you are curious about it, and quite frankly, it is really hard for me to break this down in DMs and comments for you. So I hope this video helps answer some questions that you guys have. Trigger warning. Lots of trigger warnings here. You shouldn't want to unalive yourself before, during, or after your period. And if you've ever felt out of control like that around your period, don't skip this video.
If you own a uterus, please keep watching because this is extremely important and could save a life. So basically, instead of PMS, right here, trigger warning, I get extremely depressed and suicidal. And I thought this was really rare because I've never heard of it ever in my life other than me. And I just found out today that it's one of the leading causes of the S word in women, and it affects more than 3 million American women per year.
I honestly thought miserable periods were just normal for a majority of my life, but things started to change when I got into like my mid-20s. I eventually went to the doctor and got diagnosed with PMDD. So I realized it wasn't in my head. I was depressed, I was anxious, and then I had this very excruciating pain like around my uterus every single time, 2 weeks on the dot before my period. It would just show up like clockwork, and honestly, it's been a hell of a journey. I wanted to make this video because earlier this week, I also decided to do a vlog filming a day in my life with PMDD. I didn't realize there were so many people who would resonate with a lot of the things I've talked about thus far, just kind of tossing things out on my stories. But I've also done another YouTube video earlier this year, just kind of venting about the entire process. And I didn't know that it would attract so many people who are going through the exact same thing. So I wanted to do more of an informational video. I do get a lot of messages with people asking me, what's the first step? What do I do? And I understand like the urgency and the desperation behind wanting answers. However, I am not a medical professional, and I can only tell you what I've been doing and what's worked for me. Please go talk to a doctor. I cannot give you advice. So the definition of PMDD, I will read that for you. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder is a severe form of premenstrual syndrome that includes physical and behavioral symptoms that usually resolve with the onset of menstruation. So normally during my period, I'm finally fine. It's the lead up. PMDD causes extreme mood shifts that can disrupt work and damage relationships. Symptoms include extreme sadness, hopelessness, irritability, or anger, plus common premenstrual symptoms such as breast tenderness and bloating. Drugs and lifestyle changes may help. Yeah, spot on. It's definitely like your typical PMS symptoms, but I would say on steroids, to the point that it interferes with your daily life.
Hey buddy, wanting to unalive yourself the week before your period? Not normal. Crippling anxiety or depression the week or two before your period? Also not normal. Occurring in about 5% of people, PMDD is when your mental health is gravely affected for a week or two before your period. It's generally characterized by having 5 or more of these symptoms.
I get messages, I don't know if I have it, and I love you guys, but I can't diagnose you. But one of the biggest factors for me was that I couldn't do day-to-day things. I would be in the bed all day. I felt helpless, and it was just this vicious cycle that I had to go through every single month, 2 weeks out of every month, 6 months out of every year, half my life I would have to deal with this. That was just a miserable realization for me. Crazy enough, 1 in 20 women have PMDD, and it often goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. I don't know why that could be, but my biggest guess is that because this is very understudied, because it has to do with women, and that shit's always on the back burner with us, unfortunately. It's oftentimes misdiagnosed for bipolar disorder. I don't see how, because there's nothing about my episodes that are ever really manic, but I will say that there's like anxiety waves and there's depression waves. So I think maybe that's where things get misinterpreted, especially, if the patient is explaining it in this way of being up and down. It is classified in the DSM-5 as a premenstrual disorder. So if you don't know what the DSM is, that has to do with like mental disorders. And I think that says a lot about this. And it's the reason that I want to bring up the conversation even more. I just know that when I started talking about it, a lot of people resonated with it, and it scared the shit out of me because I thought I was just sharing an experience, and then I realized, oh shit, like I can actually maybe help people figure out if they're in the same boat. Like I said, I can only go off of my experience for this, so I wanted to share my personal symptoms. One of my most common symptoms is sensory overload. When I know I'm having an episode, it's normally an indication when I can like smell every goddamn thing that's around me. I can feel every bit of fiber on the fabric on me, and it's not fun. Everything is loud. Bless AJ, because any sound he makes is like nails on a chalkboard during that time. But it's like you're just sensitive to everything. I don't want to be touched. I don't even want my clothes to touch me. Really, it would just help if I could be butt-ass naked, alone, in a closet. I don't know. Sometimes it's like all I think I can do. So physically, what I feel is your typical PMS symptoms, like tender breast, a lot of soreness, like in the pelvic region, the uterus area, but it really hurts. Like, I don't know, when I was in high school, I don't think I had this because I don't ever remember feeling like I needed to lie down. I don't remember feeling like I had physically been kicked in my stomach. So those symptoms got more extreme as I got older, and it started to interfere with my day-to-day life, and the physical symptoms got worse. And this is 2 weeks out of every month. For me, another clear indication, but one symptom that I didn't always have, was depression and anxiety around the same time as well. So it's hard to tell, like, is this depression just from something else? But when it's like that clockwork every 2 weeks, that's usually the indication that it's surrounding my period. Versus if you have depression on the regular, it's probably not from the onset of PMS. This is what would happen. My symptoms would start. I would get anxious, like, oh no, here we go again. I get scared. I then start to feel all the symptoms a lot, and I have to take off. I have to rest. I have to lie down, put work on the back burner because like I physically can't work sometimes. So with that, I'm sitting there, I'm lying down, I'm trying to rest, I'm trying to like deal with these emotions, but then there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. Like, hey, I'm not being productive, I'm not doing work. Someone like me, I just love to work and creatively. I love to do what I'm passionate about. So when I can't do that, I get really upset. So what happens from there is the anxiety that I'm getting behind on things, I'm not doing enough. Then that leads to this like depressive episode of me just being terribly sad and hopeless because I'm not doing what I want to do. I feel like I'm wasting my life. And then it always goes back to the realization, like, I gotta do this every 2 weeks. So it really puts you in this place of like hopelessness, like I can't do this. Who wants to live this way? It's an overwhelming feeling because no one can really say, here's the cure, and we'll get to like the remedies, but there's no like full-blown cure for this. I think what it would come down to is actually healing your hormones. Another really negative side effect is I feel like negative thoughts around this time are just really amplified. It's as if you give a microphone to your ego and just ask, what do you hate about yourself? Just say it all right now. What are your biggest fears? And it's like all of that feels really validated during those times. Your ego is just fucking ripping on you. I've never dealt with that. That was like a new thing that happened in the pandemic, and I think it was honestly because I had too much time in these walls. The negative thoughts were so bad for me for a while, and that wasn't always the case for me with PMDD. It was usually just, oh, like this is really this hurts a lot and I'm really sad and I'm really anxious, but I can still kind of function. But then like the whole ego thing comes in and it just rips you. Trigger warning, about to talk about suicide. The worst symptom for me, and a lot of people with this, is suicidal thoughts. And like I said, I think it comes from just feeling helpless and feeling hopeless that you continually have to go through this, especially when you're in the midst of an episode and you realize again how bad it feels. I get why people would rather just not deal with it, but that doesn't mean that you should hurt yourself. I'm in therapy, I have to be, and I also have a team of people who are supporting me and working with me because I'm gonna get through it. I did not realize how common it was until I looked up the stats behind it, and it's 30% of people with PMDD attempt suicide, 30%. And it's sad, it's frustrating for me because I know that there's not a ton of research on it and there's not a ton of help, but the fact that women are trying to end their lives over this, due to that lack of assistance, lack of help, I think it should be taken a little more seriously, a lot more seriously. I will put up some other common symptoms for you to look at, but other common ones that I don't experience are sometimes insomnia, hot flashes. There's a lot of different things. And so there are differences between PMS versus PMDD. So I encourage you to pause the screen, check out the differences between the two that, are usually called out. The ways in which PMDD has affected my life really, I think, show up in my self-talk. I would say that prior to the last couple years of me feeling like this has gotten worse, I was a lot more positive and I feel like I could hear myself a little more. And now I feel like I am constantly fighting my ego and insecurities. It brings things to the surface, and I feel like as much as that sucks, if it's coming to the surface, I need to acknowledge it. And that's what I've tried to look at this negative experience as a moment for me to get through things that maybe I've buried. Because the thing with PMDD episodes is whatever shit you swept under the rug is gonna boil to the surface. If something small in your relationship happened that you just brushed to the side, during an episode, you're gonna think about it and you're gonna get so mad about it and you're gonna wanna talk about it, but it's not gonna come out the right way. And this has happened with me and AJ, where something might have happened a long time ago and all of a sudden I'm so triggered by it for some reason. But I can't communicate with him in that moment because it's just coming from a place of anger. It's not coming from a place of truly trying to figure things out and a place of love. It's just rage, fucking rage. And so we've had to really work through this whole PMDD thing, and we still are, because I don't understand it. He doesn't understand it for sure. And so it's how do we fix something that we both don't understand? He's been really patient, and the definition literally states that this ruins relationships. I am in a Facebook group, and I will leave the link to the group here because if you think you might have it, I think it helps to see other women who have been diagnosed or think they have it speak about experiences, because it's helped me feel very at peace. But a lot of them talk about their relationships, and not everyone is so lucky to have a supportive partner who gets that this is a chronic illness and it's a part of your life until some miracle happens and you can figure out, how to alleviate these things when they happen. I'm very thankful that he is patient with this whole thing while we both try to figure it out, because it's not easy. So like I said, I do have a video talking about PMDD from earlier this year. I want to point out though that this video, I was on a different medication at the time. I had started taking an SSRI from my doctor, sertraline. For a minute, it worked, and then it didn't. And I didn't want to continue upping my dose. So I stopped taking it cold turkey. Because the thing was, I was still getting a period with the sertraline. It's not birth control. And I really didn't want to be on birth control. I've had ups and downs with it. But what happened was, I realized I was going to be on my period on my wedding and my honeymoon. Nah, I was already having a really difficult time and I had a really bad episode. And so that was kind of the last straw. I called the doctor. I said, I don't care what we do. I need to get on birth control, and specifically one that's just going to stop my period. This year isn't the year for me to really try to figure out the PMDD. Although I am working through it, I'm also trying to plan an entire wedding. That is literally in less than 30 days, and I am so excited. It's almost here. But getting through that plus this, plus trying to be an entrepreneur, self-employed, all that shit, listen, I needed a little bit of help. An SSRI is not gonna heal me, it's a Band-Aid. Birth control isn't gonna heal me, it's also a Band-Aid. Eventually, I want to fight this head on. So I always get a little triggered when people are like, don't get on birth control. Birth control saved my life. It literally saved my life.
Some people take birth control not for pregnancy prevention. They take it because they hemorrhage every month when they have a period, or they are in such debilitating pain that they can't work or go to school, or they become suicidal because of their PMS or PMDD. So nobody would ever tell a diabetic to not take insulin because there might be side effects if you don't get the dose right. And the same goes for birth control. So it's really important to understand that there's nuances here, and statements like this aren't helpful.
Be careful what you say. You don't know what women go through. You don't know why they're on medications that they're on. And I will tell you, it's the last thing I wanted to do. I was very upset about it. But here we are. It has helped me and it has worked for me. I get 4 periods a year. 4. So I was making these videos because I'm kind of going through that right now. I'm about to be on my period, so I'm already having some of those symptoms that I usually have. They aren't nearly as bad. Not nearly as bad, but they're still here. They're just not nearly as bad. And the birth control really helps me to have less of a intense fluctuation in hormones. Because the way that I always try to explain it is with PMDD, your hormones are just like volatile versus regular PMS where your hormones fluctuate more normally. I don't have to be bedridden, but I still do have little dips and episodes where some days are worse than others. But collectively, this has been miraculous for me. And I'm honestly scared to get off of it. Something else that has really been helpful for me is therapy, specifically finding the right therapist. It took me a couple tries. Initially, I had a therapist who I don't think understood anything about PMDD. She never even got it the word right. She kept saying PCOS. It's not PCOS. That's totally different. I mean, it's important to me that you know like what I'm talking about as my therapist, because there are women trying to end their lives over this and you can't even just like get the name right. So that was really frustrating to me, and I don't think like my previous therapist was like aggressive enough and wasn't like honest enough with me. I feel like she wanted to say things that made me feel good, and it was just like generic, like, oh, practice your mindfulness and your breathing. And I'm like, hello, I am having intrusive thoughts of unaliving myself. I need more than meditation right now. I mean, I do that shit every day, but it's not enough. And you need someone who really gets that, who really understands like your symptoms and validates that. Like I said earlier, Facebook groups have been really helpful too. I feel like I can support other women through those because I definitely resonate with a lot of the things that are said in those groups. Even though there's not a whole lot you can do sometimes, just hearing from people who are going through the same thing as you is such a positive thing. It brings so much peace to me to realize like I'm not a monster. I have a chronic illness that I'm just trying to figure out, but I'm not a monster because there's so much guilt surrounded by what I experience and feel. And sometimes I can lash out because I just don't know how to regulate myself. There are so many people in this group who go through the exact same thing. So it helps a lot. I also have this technique that I'm really not sure if it's healthy, and I'm kind of nervous to even share this, but I don't even claim like the PMDD thoughts. I don't claim that voice in my head. I refer to it as her. And like, you know how Kim Possible had She-Go? And She-Go, if you didn't realize, is basically her ego. That's why it's called She-Go. It's her she-ego. That's how I look at PMDD. Like, I'm Kim Possible and Shigo is here. And she's here to remind me of all my insecurities and all my fears. And once again, we're gonna duel it out, just like every Kim Possible episode. So I low-key disassociate from her. It sounds kind of crazy, but I just say, this is her. This is not Bria. This is her. Right now, the psychotic bitch is trying to drive the car and I feel like the passenger. I'm gonna let her take her little ride and I'm just gonna be the observer. And that has really helped me. I don't know why, but I hope that can help someone else. That doesn't mean you can go cuss out your partner and say it was Shigo. You still are accountable for who you are, but I think when you can realize that you're ramping up and take a step back to just connect with who you are. As cheesy as that sounds, you just need to take a step back and really clear your thoughts out. And it's hard because that voice is loud. Shigo a bitch. But you have to figure out what works for you. And I think that leads me to my next point. The reason I think it got so bad for me is because since my diagnosis of PMDD, I've always been able to be busy and do things and go places. But in the pandemic, I had to sit there with this and I had to really feel it, and I couldn't just go to brunch and distract myself like I had in the past. So this was an entirely different way of dealing with PMDD because I didn't have as many distractions. Laying in bed, as much as it is necessary, is also very toxic for me because I sit there and I think about all of the negative things and I ruminate in it. Ruminate? Yeah, I ruminate in it. I also started to go to a naturopathic doctor. And this doctor was one of the most helpful doctors I've ever encountered. Instead of medication and prescriptions, naturopathic doctors are more on self-healing, so healing from within. It is possible, but I will say it's so expensive and it's not attainable for a lot of people. I was very blessed and lucky to be able to pay for the few appointments I went to, and they each were very intentional and helped me drastically. But to be transparent, each appointment was like $350. That doesn't include the supplements I would take home. That doesn't include the follow-up phone calls and check-ins. That was just my appointments to go in and see her. However, we did extensive blood testing and we found where my levels were unbalanced, and I started taking supplements like vitamin B complex, vitamin D3, and incorporating that in my daily diet, having that with breakfast or whatever, and saw a significant difference in my energy like within a week. And just by boosting my energy, it also boosted my mood. So vitamin deficiencies and your levels can also play a part in how this could affect you, and I think how well you can tolerate your PMDD episodes. So if you have the means and can ever go to a naturopathic doctor, I highly recommend it because it was really life-changing for me and it helped me, and I plan to do more of it eventually. I'm on birth control, so we couldn't do all of the hormone healing just yet. We were more so focusing on other things like vitamin and levels for the time being, which was still drastically able to change a lot for me. And then educating AJ is also something that I had to learn how to do. When I'm in a clear state, it's easier for me to talk to him and explain to him these things. But when I'm going through it, it's not really a good time for me to try to explain to him what's going on. So I made a little sheet in a Word doc that was helpful things to do when I'm going through an episode, and also things to not say. Love him, but there was one particular phrase that used to trigger me. He would say, "I don't know what to do with you." And I understand that it is difficult dealing with someone who has PMDD, but when you're going through an episode, that's the last thing you should say to someone, because we don't know how to deal with us either. Especially when you're having dangerous, intrusive thoughts, hearing something like that is also very dangerous and could be triggering. So I had to tell him, can you not say you don't know what to do, you don't know how to deal with me, you don't know what to do with me. And instead, I don't need him to know the solution. I don't have the solution either. All I need you sometimes to do, even if you're not really sure either, and maybe it is a lie, is to just tell me I'm gonna be okay. That's really all I want to hear. And just hug me. That's all I need when I'm going through my episodes. I just need to be reminded that it will be okay, because it will be okay. Even if it's hard, it will be okay. I also had to work a lot on my diet, and I was already doing that because I started to train for the wedding. So that was kind of something that, I was already working on. But I think during my episodes, my body really wants certain things, like very plant-based friendly things. So just being aware of what your body wants, and it can be tempting to go for the fast food and stuff, but honestly, it makes things worse. Alcohol makes things worse. So, sticking to low sodium, getting a lot of healthy fats and a lot of lean proteins is one of the best things I could have done for myself, and that's what I try to stick to. And then of course, I stick to a very consistent routine of working out. So exercising, even if I absolutely don't want to, and it is the hardest thing in the world for me, I do it anyways, because I understand that consistency and that discipline is making my overall experience better, even if in that moment it does not feel like that. The bottom line, you guys, is that your period should not make you miserable. It should not interfere with your relationships. It should not interfere with your day-to-day life. If this is happening for you, where you're having these really intense symptoms and episodes yourself, or you think you might, please just talk to a doctor and try to figure out if it's something you do have. You should never feel like you need to hurt yourself to cope with something that is natural. So definitely look into this, do some research if you know someone or you yourself resonates with anything that I said, because it's just not worth feeling like this and not knowing that you even have it. So the more you know, the more you can do. But I will keep you guys updated on this journey. It is a journey, and I am happy to tell you that there's hope and there are things that can improve your experience. But I will continue to update you and hope that it helps. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week.